How we doing, class? Welcome to our branding module, the first of two branding experience modules. The other interesting thing about where we're at in the semester is prior to the branding week, everything we've done up to this point has been foundational. We needed to do MO, we needed to do learning within MO, we needed to do satisfaction, loyalty, we needed to do CRM. So now that we have that as a foundation, we get to branding. And branding, in my eyes, is radically different in a bottom-up world versus a bottom-down world. And we're going to get to that in these articles, in these questions. I look forward to even talking about this more with you on Monday night. So let's get started. Welcome to the Experience Economy. This is a classic. This is probably one of the few articles that I call a classic and that is more than 10 years old that you actually liked. This is probably the second or third of 4 or 5 articles this semester we're going to read by Mr. Joseph Pine. He's a pretty cool dude. Let me see if I can be helpful here. What realms of experience do social media sites offers to its customers? All right. Now, I do have an issue with these realms of experience. Absorption, immersion, passive, active. I get passive versus active. I get that. That makes sense to me. I'm not sure about the difference between absorption and immersion. When we talk about social, though, it depends. There are many passive social users and there are many active social users. You are either a consumer or you are a creator. So, depending on which social site you're on, there are many people who are active in Twitter that follow and use it as a news aggregator. There are many people that use Snapchat and they're primarily just watching other people's snaps, but they don't offer any of themselves. We know that 99.9% of all YouTube participants do nothing but watch and do not create their own YouTube videos. So really, depending on how passive or how active the individual is what they would do on a particular site. Some people may read blogs, but then they don't create their own blogs. What is the first step to actually selling an experience? Knowing what the product or the consumer wants, or knowing what type of experience matches the product? This isn't a loaded question. In my head, I always start here. We're oriented towards the market. Right? We know what the customer wants, or we're investigating what the customer wants, or we're learning through our CRM data what the customer wants. And based on their wants, we're going to deliver an experience that fits their needs or wants. Does paying admission increase the amount of commitment a person has walking into a store or trade show, therefore making him more likely to buy something? There's no question that paying a commission increases the amount of commitment. Okay? You can't go to Disney for an hour. You're not paying that much money for the ticket to go in there for an hour. Right? Does it make him or her more likely to buy something? That is a different question. It could be the case that they enjoy the experience so much that their resistance to not buying something gets reduced. You may pay all that money to see Cirque du Soleil, and prior to the show, you wouldn't pay $35 for a shirt. On the way out, you do. At what level of growth should a service provider organization that has not yet incorporated experiences start staging experience as part of their marketing? I think in a bottom-up world, when really the crowd is deciding all messaging, meaning, the more you can move towards experience where the crowd gets to decide, let's go to Jimmy Buffett. I'm a big Jimmy Buffett fan. I collected a ton of data with Jimmy Buffett fans. And what Jimmy Buffett does is create an opportunity for an experience, but he lets the fans operationalize that experience in any way they wish. He doesn't tell them how to dress. He doesn't tell them how to tailgate. He doesn't tell them what to drink. None of that. He lets the fans create their experience as part of their consuming of Jimmy Buffett. There are other companies that are, see Article 3, that are very, very detailed and tight how they create the service touch points and have an overall experience. Are the economics of the individual able to support this long term? Yes. Yes. Could you foresee a trend reverting back to more simple? Yes. These are not dichotomous questions here. There is no question that everyone here grew up in an era where your parents took care of your birthday party. And my kids are experiencing a scenario there. Every birthday party they pretty much go to is staged somewhere else. A jumpy Sky Zone, bouncy place, haunted house, da-da-da-da-da. Very few birthday parties are done in-home, ever. Could you foresee this trend reverting back to more simple? Perhaps. Really, this is more about time. If the parents have the time to do it, sure. But most parents don't have the time. Example, the Jets are selling coaches boxes experience, where fans like myself who used to grill the parking lot have given up their season tickets to decrease cost of marketing selling experiences. That seems that more companies are purchasing these packages than individuals. Well, look, this is a supply and demand thing. You're in the largest metro area of the United States with two of the most popular teams in the entire NFL. Guess what? They don't have a game where there's empty seats. So they can continually upsell. For industries with less competitors, is it prudent for a company to invest in customer experience since it adds cost? Yes. Because I'm going to tell you right now that experience and firms with higher experience have higher loyalty. And we already know what higher loyalty does. When costing out pricing and services, what components or marketers are involved? All right. When you're looking at, this is very general, about what? Ask me this question on Monday again. I'm not sure what we're asking here. Yes, is these experiences, is Disney, is Mall of America, is the New York Jets, are they more expensive than not? Yes. Do they deliver more than they used to in the past? Yes. I'm a big fan of Peloton. I think they have a unique product, service, and experience offering. They do. Do you think their success is sustainable? I do. Or do you think they will need to adapt to the future? They need to continue to add value, we've had value articles, to increase the richness of the experience. That's really the name of the game. People do not like exercising, but people like being part of a team. Right? People like being part of a competition. That's what Peloton can do for you. Do you believe that experience economy will last? I think it will exponentially grow. I absolutely positively. One, we're asking for it. The stakes keep getting raised as consumers. And two, this is how you imbue loyalty, that people are price insensitive. People will save for years for that Disney vacation. They will. With Airbnb now marketing customer experiences as an offering, do you think that other on-demand services will follow suit like Uber? Uber and Lyft are already offering other types of service stuff. Delivery, You name it. So I wouldn't be surprised if we started seeing things along those lines. I mean, if we had self-driving Uber, well, self-driving Uber better have an experience in the car like Wi-Fi so you can watch the movie on the way to work. Or at least listen to podcasts. If we begin to place a monetary value on customer experience, would this strategy in the long run be successful? I already answered this question, and I absolutely positively. This was written in 1998. These guys were way ahead of the game. They wrote this before there was even a sniff of the bottom-up world. In the bottom-up world, experience, loyalty, branding, cultural influence, we're going to get to cultural when we get to Holt in a second. Significantly more important now than it even was when this article was written. That's why this article is probably never going to get deleted from this packet. Every experience can differ based on customer taste and preferences. How do organizations guarantee that their products or service create memorable events for each of their customers? Well, some of that is listening. Some of that is matching the experience per, if you go to Foxborough, Massachusetts, yes, there's the Patriot Stadium there, but there's also a huge outdoor mall. Huge. Absolutely huge. And it fits with the scenario of Foxborough because there is nothing there. I mean, it's in the middle of nowhere. It's within 15 miles north of Providence. It's about 40 miles south of Boston. You need to go there for a destination, but you should go for more than just the game. Or you should go to that area when there isn't a game. And they have various activities there. They have this submarine adventure for kids. Very experiential. It's like $12, 2 hours, 90 minutes. It's fantastic. You feel like you're in a sub. You feel like there's danger. You feel like you're part of an adventure. Should companies be more focused on digital experiences versus real-world experiences? It depends on which company. If I'm Oculus, digital. If I'm Disney, real world. You play to your wheelhouse. Do you believe virtual reality will go mainstream or will be just a fad that lasts a few years? I am bullish on virtual reality, but I'm not bullish on it happening next year. There is still lots of issues with the content and the distribution and the devices. Right now, we are very, very early days of virtual reality. I'm more interested in augmented reality. Stuff that we can do now with this and just holding it up. To me, Pokemon Go is an augmented reality scenario, not virtual reality. And it exploded. I can see more things like Pokemon Go, like experiences going mainstream before I see headsets and VR going mainstream. Do you believe that creating too many experiences can hurt a company? No. For example, if we take the NFL, the fact that fantasy football has become a huge craze, Red Zone has become increasingly popular on television, and games can be streamed via mobile apps and social media. Are people less inclined to attend the live game? The NFL, of course, rakes in billions of dollars, but live attendance numbers are a bit concerning. It's not live attendance numbers are concerning. The teams that always sell out have always sold out this year. It's the TV revenue numbers or the TV participation numbers that declined this year. The NFL was down 8%, which I'm not surprised because I've been talking about the doom and gloom of network TV for a long time. We don't live in that world anymore. We live in a time-shifted world. We decide when and where we want to watch it. So, am I surprised that the numbers are down? No. Okay. So, if there was only one article we were going to read about branding, it would be this one. I met Doug a couple times. He actually took me out to dinner when I was a doctoral student once. He's not going to remember me, but I remember him very much and very well. This article, again, 2003, was written before any sniff of the bottom-up world. But this is branding in a bottom-up world. You know? If you guys are still hurting for books, this is a spectacular book, which is the book version of this article. He has a more recent one that talks more into the cultural aspect. And if you're really into the culture and you want a cultural MO branding book, this is Grant McCracken, Chief Culture Officer. Excellent, excellent classic. Culture is important to becoming an icon. It is vital. It's not important. How do you market a brand in a way that is rugged and different without alienating the mainstream? How do you market a brand in a way that is rugged and different without alienating the mainstream? Well, iconic doesn't mean it has to be the biggest brand. I mean, if we look at Mountain Dew is never Coke. Mountain Dew is never Sprite. But it has its own unique cultural market mindshare. You know, we could talk about Penn Reels for the fishermen out there. You know, that is not mainstream by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a rugged and it's a different fishing brand. So, iconic doesn't mean it has to be the biggest brand in the world. It just means it has to be unique. And if I say, okay, let's play a game real quick. You ready? I'm going to yell out 5 things. And I want you to write down the first thing that comes into your head when I say it. Apple. Mercedes. Seton Hall. The Jersey Shore. JC 120. So when I said Apple, maybe you had an image of a computer, an iPhone. When I said Mercedes, you saw a sedan. Maybe you saw dollar signs. Maybe you saw the logo with the like that. When I said Seton Hall, maybe you saw a pirate, a business building. You saw the campus, the pop. Jersey Shore. You know, who knows what came into your head with Jersey Shore? What came into your head when I said JC 120? I know you can't answer me because there's a video, but I have a feeling that absolutely nothing came into your head when I said JC120. JC120 was probably a complete blank slate in your head. Well, that's kind of what a brand is. A brand is a mental shortcut. And you have little shortcuts in your head about Apple, about Mercedes, Seton Hall, the Jersey Shore. You know, when I say Jersey Shore, I think of Ocean City. You know, that's where we go the most. The rides, the boardwalk, the beach, my dad's fishing pier. You know? JC120. You had no mental shortcuts for JC120. A JC120 is probably the best jazz amplifier you can get if you're a guitar player. You know, I'm biased because I used to have one. I just sold it. Now I have a JC55. But the 120 was the big, gigantic professional one, 60 watts each side, two 12-inch speakers, stereo chorus. It was fantastic. I got a smaller one now, JC55. I have all kinds of mental shortcuts for a JC, a Roland Jazz Chorus. You may not. That's what a brand is. A brand is a mental shortcut. It has mind share in your head. Right? How did Amazon become an iconic brand by focus on low-cost strategy? It's not the cost is why it became iconic. It's the experience of using Amazon. being absolutely stunned when looking for something that, oh my God, they have it. Where nowhere else you could buy this particular book or this particular item, but Amazon does. By having Prime, by having delivery the same day or the next day, by it just being so efficient and safe and going in and one-click ordering. That's how Amazon became iconic, not by cost. Cost had nothing to do with it. Explain how Nike and Apple were able to build brands without relying on the principles of conventional marketing. Well, I disagree with everything we said from here and here. You know, Nike and Apple built their brands through network television. Okay? The difference is that Nike and Apple did things that were counterculture versus the rest of the industry that helped them stand out. They both, and for the most part, still speak with a rebel voice, for instance. But believe it or not, it wasn't Nike and Apple by themselves that made them cultural iconic brands. Iconic brands are iconic because the crowd decides that they are iconic. If there is a cultural conversation around Nike, if there is a cultural conversation around Apple, maybe it's fueled a little bit by Nike's ads and a little bit by Apple's ads, but 80% of it is the crowd and not Nike and not Apple. You know, look at the auto companies. We could talk about Porsche, small niche, but there's a cultural conversation around Porsche. Tesla, cultural conversation around Tesla. Buick, great Super Bowl ad, but where's that cultural conversation? Kia, great Super Bowl ad, but where's that cultural conversation? The author selected iconic brands that substantiate their points, but they are universally true. Yeah. You know, he picked, you know, in this book, in the article, he only did Mountain Dew. In this book, he did I thought he did a brand by brand one. Hold on. Give me a sec. Oh, maybe he did that in another book. I don't know. Just so you know, Holt is a huge researcher, did his PhD at Northwestern, from there was at Penn State, from there went to Harvard, then got sick of academia, published articles in the top academic journals. He's got his own consulting firm now. He left academia. Oh, he went to London Business School for a while too. I forgot about that. So let's just say that I'm a true believer. Campbell's Chicken Soup is iconic, but it's not obvious to me that they're met with any criteria outlined in the article. Well, I don't see Andy Warhol picking Campbell's Soup unless it was iconic in the first place. You know, I'm with you with Campbell's Soup. The food industry is populated with example, Uncle Ben's, Tony the Tiger, Legos. You mean Eggos, probably. Because that's not the food industry. But Legos are iconic. There's a cultural conversation around Legos. I don't know about Uncle Ben. You know. There is a cultural conversation around chicken soup. How can an international company maintain and boost sales in other countries while they're creating an iconic brand? Consider a country's culture playing a big role in the national company and will this affect the brand's sales. What will the company do if the brand icon has a conflict with the country's culture or religion? If the brand icon has a conflict with the country's culture or religion, it will not become an iconic brand. The cultural conversation around that brand will not be positive, and it will not be long-lasting. This has happened in the past. Well, a brand will take one brand to another country and blow it. Like we had the Chevy Nova here in the United States, which was a very popular car for a very long time. It was from an iconic brand, Chevrolet. They brought the Nova to Mexico. Okay? They just thought that all those MBAs that they hired up there in Michigan, out of Michigan and Michigan State and Ivy schools that were going to go work at General Motors, we're going to say, okay, let's pick up some market share. Mexico's a close country. Let's just export them down to Mexico, and let's try to sell the Chevy Nova in Mexico. Well, for those who speak Spanish in class, Nova means no go in Spanish. So Chevy tried to sell the no-go car in Mexico. How do you think that went? What are some other examples? Mountain Dew moved the hillbilly to extremism. That went through a rebrand. Which ones were successful and which one are failed? I can tell you right now that Kay Jewelers completely failed. They're trying to make their comeback. There is more rebranding comebacks. I think Campbell's right now on a rebranding kind of a comeback. They were super, super iconic at one point, and they've lost a lot of their cultural conversation. I think Chevy's getting their mojo back. I think Cadillac in the last 15 years has really came back from the dead, where Buick is still struggling to do so. Buick's still around because Buick outside the United States has a much higher cachet than it does here, particularly in China, where Buick is somewhat of a premium brand. You know, it's not BMW, it's not Mercedes, but it's not Chevy. Right? Is there any efficient way, except what mentioned in the article, that you can evaluate customer satisfaction about their experiences? Well, I think in today's day and age, which I know he didn't talk about in the article because it didn't exist in 2003, get yourself a social media listening tool and fire up the API from Twitter or from Facebook and see what brands have the strongest or the highest positive cultural conversation. The article points out that society's ideologies can change how people act in the workplace. Do you think that Karen and I do the workplace today? Of course. You know, if you look at offices today, we went through decades of a cubicle culture. Now we're going into, I don't know, we're 2, 3, 5 years into complete open floor plans and no desks. Carry your laptop around and sit where you want today. Can you provide a contemporary example of iconic brand repositioning Mountain Dew? Cadillac. Really, really, really good one. Really, really, really good one. Why are icons so successful in terms of marketing and brand for a company? Well, in a nutshell, if there is a crowd out there that is supportive of the brand, it's easier for the company to use that wind at their back to help sell that particular product. There is a crowd to listen to figure out what to do with R&D and development. There is a crowd that you can launch products to. There is an audience out there to engage with. Is it possible in any way to turn a company into an icon focused simply on conventional marketing rather than combining its culture? Sure. You guys are looking at this question from a top-down perspective. The company does not create the icon. The crowd creates the icon. All the company can do is tap into a narrative that is happening out there in culture. You know, the slacker culture existed for Mountain Dew to position their brand into. Look at today's culture. We are in one of these cultures. We look at machines. We value time more than we ever did. We value speed more than we ever did. We value time shifting more than we ever did. So that's what you would do. You would look to see what's happening in culture, and you would amplify that or position your brand around what's happening in culture. Which brands are the next icons in our world? There's too many to list, really. I mean, quote unquote, I mean, it's easy to go there, but I just listened to a podcast about them, and Snapchat just formally put out their S1, so we can finally see what they think. They made $400 million last year. They think they have a $25 billion evaluation. They're not profitable. The spectacle revenue for Snapchat is inconsequential, so much so that they didn't even list it. But Snaps, there's no question that Snapchat in the social world has the cultural conversation. Okay, we have another Doug Holt for the readings for next week. This one talks a little bit more about social and digital. It's new. I've never read it yet. I'm curious to see how he brings the model that he developed from this book and made a short version of it in this article into the Web 2.0 world, which didn't exist when he wrote it the first time. Okay, next article. So now we had our two foundation articles, older classics. Let's do two applications newer articles. Experiences. Are certain parts of the journey more important than others? It depends on the brands, it depends on the company. More influential to the sale or influential to retention? Look, Disney knows that when you go to a Disney theme park, within the park you're probably going to meet somewhere between 45 to 60 touch points, concessions, performances, ride people. If you stay in the hotel, you probably have about 150 interactions with employees or cast members, as they're called. It's only more important than others if something goes wrong. Do you think there's a difference between getting close to culture and going down to a customer's level? And how can a brand embody these ideas of iconic making but still attempt to improve customers' cultural and lifestyle? I don't think these are dichotomous things. If we are market-oriented and we're listening, and we can identify certain touch tones of culture, right? In my eyes, that is listening to the customer. I don't know if you want to call that, going down market or simplifying things to the customer. I mean, if you want to talk about Reddit, or if you want to talk about, what's the other one? It'll come to me, the super big BuzzFeed, Huffington Post. I mean, when Huffington Post came out originally, it was laughed at because the New York Times was here, the Washington Post was here, and Huffington Post was here. And guess what? Huffington Post now has triple the number of readers as those two other publications. And so what is Huffington Post doing now? It's going up market. It's now winning Pulitzer Prizes. Hopefully we'll see BuzzFeed go in this direction. But this is the classic innovator's dilemma. Clay Christensen, you start off simple, you start off down, and you work your way up. That's iconic building. I'm okay with that. To what extent do executives actually include employees in developing the customer journey, transforming, enhancing? Well, it depends on, how much which employees are interacting with the crowd. Hopefully, a lot. But I don't think you exclude employees by any stretch of the imagination. How can companies be sure that information that they gather about their customers is not distorted and will be beneficial to the transformation? Well, you confirm. No information you get is truth. Nothing from Twitter, nothing from Facebook, nothing from qualitative research, nothing from quantitative research is absolute truth. But we do multiple data collections, we do multiple listening opportunities, and we listen, confirm, we listen, we test, we listen, we confirm, we listen. We go, we explore. We have a hunch, We explore it further to see if it's actually true or not. Being that the article focused on unconscious stimuli, can it be said that the cause of effect or benefit is being measured and questionable? Alright, we could go down a really big rabbit hole with conscious versus unconscious. I mean, a Nobel Prize rabbit hole. I mean, this book is not thin. It's a really good book. It's a spectacular book. Yes, this dude won a Nobel Prize on this stuff. But I don't think where we're at this semester are we going to go there. Let's just say that our brain operates, we have two systems, okay? We have the automatic, or system 1, or we have the, what do we call the, just call it the thinking, or system 2. There's system 1 and there's system 2. So system 1 is you pulling out of your driveway and not necessarily even looking. You've already done it 100 times. You can kind of do it without thinking. All right? You're driving somewhere and you drive to work and you can have a conversation. You could sing a song. You can do multiple other different things because subconsciously or unconsciously, your brain already has this all worked out. You ever notice when you're lost or you're trying to find something, you find yourself turning the radio down because you have to concentrate? Okay, now you're in system 2. You know, where you're walking around a foreign city and you got a map and you're constantly engaging. Kids are home from school. You know, and you're really tired at the end of the night. Why? Your brain uses 30 to 40% of the entire energy you put into your body in a given day. All right? The more you use system 2, the more tired you will be. So, really good book if you want to read it. Is it worth for a company's time to make such amount of calls to get one customer? It depends on, you know, in my head, customer lifetime value. You spend the time and effort to get a customer, and then you retain them for 25 years, and you make your money back. Customer lifetime value. What are some recent examples of cross-functional disconnects that create a poor customer experience? Does any of us have Comcast? My God. We could go on forever. But that's a really good example where my cable experience is good. My phone experience is okay. They tried to put a security system in my house, and it was a complete, utter disaster. I canceled it. I made them yank it out. It was terrible. You buy a security system so you can arm the house, but you need the security system to actually arm, and it wouldn't. And they couldn't figure out how to do it. So guess what? I had to get rid of it. Is there any efficient way except what mentioned in the article that you can evaluate the customer satisfaction about their experiences? Didn't we already answer this question? Has the rise of micro moments complicated or simplifies a marketer's job in addressing the customer's end-to-end journey? I think it's made it harder. I mean, there's not, you know, when we talk about service encounters and we talk about service, we talk about that moment of time. Okay? Micro moments, or the fact that we have so much digital and we have so much face-to-face, guess what? I think it's harder. I really do think it's harder. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, you know. The only way we're going to get CRM, the only way we're going to get loyalty, the only way we're going to get those recommendations, the only way is if we go above and beyond. So, thinking about the end-to-end journey is the way to go. Why are companies more focused on touch points rather than the journey in terms of involvement? I think you got a forest and the trees thing here. They are concerned about the journey. But the journey consists of many, 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 many of these. And the journey will be good if we get all of these right. Can a company or organizations ensure that each customer receives the same amount of experience all the time? Oh boy. This is really, really, really hard because you guys have gone to a restaurant and had an incredible experience and went back to the restaurant a week later or a month later and had a terrible experience. And it's really tough. There's so much more variability when it comes to humans because, you know, you could have a different waiter or waitress. You could have a different chef or sous chef. You could have a different multitude of different reasons. You know, it's really difficult. And the good companies like Nordstrom, like Ritz-Carlton, like Disney, they train. It's hard though. I'm telling you, it's really hard. Is it expensive to initiate to build cross-functional processes and institute cultural changes in the organization? Are there statistics or payoff? Is it expensive? Yes. Cross-function is hard. Very, 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 very difficult. There are 9 more firms for every firm that is not MO. You know, for every MO firm, there are 9 non-MO firms because cross-functional and interfunctional discipline. Silos are easy. Breaking down silos is hard. Changing culture is hard. Sure, there's statistics and there's payoff. You know, companies have come back from the brink. IBM, General Motors, most recently. You know, Apple was, you know, when Steve Jobs came back, they were 90 days away from bankruptcy. That's how much cash they had. 90 days worth of cash. That's it. So, sure. How can company culture play a role in designing customer journey maps? Well, you need a learning culture in order to pull off these touch points. You need an empathetic culture in order to think about the entire journey. You need the bottom-up kind of mentality or a learning mentality or a market-oriented mentality. Otherwise, if your company's going to be top-down, they're just going to tell the customer, well, this is what you do, this is what we sell, this is what you're going to buy or you're not going to buy, and I'm going to try to persuade you to buy. You know. Can a customer journey map help increase perceived value in product service offerings? Or is it simply a mechanism to help improve experience with different types of experience? It is a mechanism that will improve experiences, that will therefore increase overall perceived value. Okay, last article. This was a short one. Thought it was kind of neat. Solely. Rely solely. Blending science with the art of marketing. Should you ever rely solely on data when making decisions? Depends on what you define as data. I mean, the easy answer is yes, you know, because whether the data is quantitative, qualitative, whether it's generalizable, non-generalizable, we make decisions based on information. If you want to call that information data or not data, you know, what are you going to make the decision? What, on your gut? I don't know. Does wine in a glass actually have a different taste, or is it just something that has been spread throughout our culture to be the norm? Wine in a wine in glass, particular types of glass, does taste different. Okay? You know, there is a specific shape to a glass that impacts the smell. You know, red glasses tend to be larger because you need the wine to breathe more. White wines, which are chilled for the most part, don't need to breathe. They don't have the tannins. They don't have the red skins and all like that. The root of this is actually chemistry. Okay, it's, you know, chemistry and experience from those chemical reactions. No. That said, Can marketers and advertisers influence expectations? Yes. If I were to hand you the gift and it was in that blue box with that color and that ribbon, before you even opened it, you had a set of expectations to the level of quality that are going to be in that blue box. And if you don't know what blue box I'm talking about, just Google that expression and it will come up. How does this apply to purchasing digital content and products online? It very much applies to purchasing products online. Amazon does not interact with any of its customers. I disagree with you tremendously. Rather, they have self-service options on its website. Self-service is interaction. All of those touch points are recorded. Amazon is fanatical with their UI, UX. UI means user interface. UX means user experience. There was a point when Amazon was so fanatical in the late 90s and early 2000s, they were actually making consulting money helping other online companies fix their UI and their UX. There was a time period that some of you remember that you were uncomfortable with buying stuff in a self-service option with a credit card through a screen. Amazon fixed that. Does it apply to digital content? Yes. Is Amazon still the best at it? Yes. Can sense-based marketing be a risk? Everything's a risk, so I'm going to agree with you. What if the appeal to the consumer is beyond expectation and he or she has a sensory reaction? I'm assuming you mean a negative reaction. But when he gets to the product and uses it, the second site might not be present again. Well, You ever notice when you walk into a supermarket, all supermarkets are right-handed stores pretty much. So you walk in and what's on the right-hand side of the store? It's always floral and bakery. Well, floral and produce, and usually bakery with that smell of baked bread is within view or close to when you walk into the store. Why floral and why veggies and fruits? Because of the colors and the smells. It's a prime. When you walk into stores, there is smell. When you walk into a department store, the first area you walk into from the mall is what? Cosmetics and perfume. Someone's going to spray you. Is that an accident? No. Does this have a potential to throw R&D department or any other department off? No. Why? This is a data stream. You collect the data. You learn. Look at the statistics that were in that article. How did Dunkin' Donuts know those numbers? Well, the R&D department, guess what, came up with those numbers. I don't know. Optimizing the journey is likely to be a costly endeavor. Being that most companies seem to have a potential cycle of cost cutting, how is this process impacted? Overcoming this seems necessarily driven from the top. Well, the companies that are cutting costs are not doing well in the marketplace. The companies that have the time and money to invest in stuff like this are doing well in the marketplace. But isn't that by definition what you need to be doing? If sensory and experience is the path to loyalty, why aren't you doing it? If you spend more time cost cutting and you're not doing that sensory experience, loyalty, iconic branding, you're in a vicious cycle. Would you call using sensory inputs to influence consumer behavior a form of manipulation or persuasion? Manipulation or persuasion? Potato. Manipulation has a negative. Persuasion tends to have a negative connotation as well. This usually isn't as negative as this. This is your word. Every one of us has a way to influence someone else. So guess what? Whether you want to call that influence manipulation or whether you want to call it persuasion, in my eyes, I like being helpful. If I can find out what people want and it's really going to benefit them, WIIFM, what's in it for me, which means them, and then I don't have to get into any of this, I'm listening. I'm empathetic. I'm delivering value. I don't see a problem there. In the article, the author mentioned about how difficult it is to do business well with both on depth and width. What will most entrepreneurs do and what they will choose? Well, most entrepreneurs tend to go for depth in one particular area. They do something really, really well. Like with Snap and Spectacles, that was actually something adding various SKUs that was impressive. But look at Twitter. Twitter has not innovated in years. But then you look at Facebook, and Facebook has been going, whoa, they got VR. They got Facebook Live. They keep adding features. They've experimented with gaming. They've experimented with Facebook Bucks. They keep, they're a little bit different. What most companies do, though, is they try to be successful on something and then grow from there. More depth in a particular area. What tools can a marketer utilize to embed? Okay. This is System 1 and System 2 again. There are a lot of really good books on this stuff. Two of my favorite are Predictably Irrational, Dan Ariely, professor at Duke, and Richard Thaler, Nudge. This book is really, 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 really good. This is really what we're talking about with embedded cognition, where we can be helpful. For instance, in Nudge, okay? It was the case that about a third of all people in the United States did not sign up for the 401k. For whatever reason, they had to sign up for it in order to start getting that benefit. So the default was to opt in. Okay? So there were many employees across the United States for decades that never saved money for retirement. So he created a retirement plan and did a number of experiments where he made the default you needed to opt out of the 401. Now, you could easily opt out. All you had to do was sign the form and you didn't have to be part of the 401k plan. Okay? And there were people that did that. But for the overmajority of the people that never got it in the past, all of a sudden, they got retirement money. That's a perfect example of a nudge, or we could call this embodied cognition, to influence someone to do something well, or to do something that benefits them. Do you know of a situation where a company tried to purposely use sensory marketing and it backfired? I'm old, so anytime you go into one of those crazy stores in the mall, Abercrombie, and oh my God, you talk about overkill with the sense. In other words, people were put off by the sensory market instead of being inspired to purchase. Maybe they're purposely trying to get old people like me out of the store. It could be. But if you were to walk into a mall, I'm going to tell you right now that 75% or higher of them use scent, use color, use lighting, use at least 3 to 5 of the senses in their retail environment. Have you guys ever been to a Cabela's, a Bass Pro Stores? Restaurants. Every restaurant is sensory. The article states that our hyper-connected world isn't as tightly linked as it was during the peak of globalization in 2007, just before the economic crisis hit. Do you agree? I disagree. I disagree. I disagree. I disagree. I disagree. I disagree. In the bottom-up world, we are more connected. We are more tightly linked now than we ever were. The article uses an example of BMW mics and amps the engine sounds in its M5 model to enhance the car's sporty feel. But I think this kind of sound is not real reflection of the car's real performance. So does this kind of enhancement meet a customer's need? Yes, it does. Most people don't even know about the mic and the amps. Is the enhancement in the customer sensation more important than the enhancement in the product's performance? Well, most customers cannot tell the difference between the sensation and the performance. Oh, I gotta hit pause. Hi, this is Dan.